What about Last Night in Soho, the new Edgar Wright film?
Well, I know Stone wants to go first on
Okay,
that one.
Stone, I
Well,
know you're shot out of a cannon. Stone, we're going to wait for you last. We're going to hold you
Okay,
to
good.
actually, Stone, I'm pulling you out of here.
Ooh.
No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Look at Stone's face. Go for it, man. Go with it.
Oh, me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I could wait to be last, but okay.
No.
Okay. Like I said, one of the reasons why I fell in love in the first place when I was 10 years old is because I thought to myself, wow, this is the only way that you could really time travel. You know, you can go all the way into the future like with Dune, or you can go in the past like Last Night in Soho. Last Night in Soho is a movie that's been on my mind for the last few months, ever since I saw the first trailer for it. Now, I got to confess that I don't watch trailers voluntarily anymore because they just straight up give away too much. I mean, one of the movies that they showed with the trailer was a movie called The Black Phone with Ethan Hawke and directed by Scott Derrickson. Just an asterisk, do not watch that trailer. Just go in the movie cold because it gives away too much. A lot of trailers tend to give away too much now. Same thing. Don't watch the second Last Night in Soho trailer. Either watch the first one, the teaser that they released in May, or watch the music video Downtown with Anya Taylor-Joy, who is, of course, the star of Robert Eggers' The Witch. Now, the real star of Last Night in Soho, though, is Thomasin McKenzie, who is a New Zealand actress. She's 21 years old, brand new. And like I said, this is from Edgar Wright, who directed Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, The World's End, Scott Pilgrim, and Baby Driver. And it's basically a massive love letter to 1960s swinging London. But it is also a psychological horror filled with giallo-ish elements, nods to Argento, nods to Bava. And Edgar Wright, of course, shows clearly how much of a horror fan that he's been for so many decades. He wanted to do a straight-up horror for himself and put everything that he loves about the 60s into that story. And Anya Taylor-Joy, here again, the movie, I'm not going to give away too much aside from the fact it mixes ghosts and time travel. And Thomasin McKenzie is a fashion student in England who finds herself transported back to the 1960s in London and seeing this chanteuse played by Anya Taylor-Joy from The Witch, who is luminous. She actually sings. Her covers for Petula Clark are amazing, as is the rest of the soundtrack. Just real quick, the soundtrack is like a string of 60s gold. I mean, you got Dusty Springfield, The Searchers, the John Barry Orchestra, the Kinks, Cilla Black, The Who. Yeah. And Anya Taylor-Joy does the covers for Petula Clark's Downtown, but it's a massive soundtrack full of chestnuts from that era. And it's just a really fast-paced, really wonderful ghost story. And it's about essentially the ghosts of the past that haunt certain cities and certain people's dreams and everything, and how we shouldn't embrace our heroes because they may have been completely different people than what we idolize them to be. I mean, and, Thomasin McKenzie, Anya Taylor-Joy, they're both brilliant. They're superstars practically. And we also have like 60s veterans, Terrence Stamp and the late Emma Peel. Her name escapes me at the moment. Diana Rigg. This was her last movie. She shot it before her death in December 2020. She was, of course, on Her Majesty's Secret Service and is along with Terrence Stamp, they're both like massive icons of the 60s. There's another great performance by Matt Smith, who has a spitting image of Lawrence Harvey, of all people, who was an actor at that time. And here again, this was probably one of the, next to Dune, and maybe it's because of the pandemic that we've been out of the theaters for so long, but Last Night in Soho I found to be a life-changing experience. Now, that is just me. I am probably overpraising it because I'm sure that we'll get some legitimate criticisms here. But look, I've seen the movie twice. I adore everything about it. I adore the music, the production design, the effects, just Edgar Wright's passion and Edgar Wright's love for genre and for film and for art. I mean, his energy is all over the place, as it typically is. And yeah, I can't recommend Last Night in Soho enough. And seriously, check out those downtown videos and covers that Anya Taylor-Joy does, because she's 25 and she's already shooting to the stars and beyond that, because I adored The Witch. I still need to see her version of Emma. And I also saw her recently, and I'll pass it on to Dan and Lauren so they can go off here. But Anya Taylor-Joy was also in a documentary I saw recently about Anton Yelkin, which was very, very moving. If you ever get a chance, that's available now.
What was that one called, Stone? Is that on a streaming service? I heard something about it a while back.
I watched it on Prime. It's Love Antioch.
Oh, okay.
It's his Russian. It's his Russian part of his name. But yeah, it's very, very moving. I mean, Anya Taylor-Joy talks about working with him on a movie they did called Thoroughbreds. But Green Room, which was one of his last films, was great. But anyway, I want to pass it on to you guys because Last Night in Soho. So
I'm glad you liked it. And
oh yes.
So, well, actually, Lauren, do you want to go take it before me?
Do we really want to bring the party down that fast?
Well, I might bring it down a little too, but
okay. So here's the thing. I don't think Edgar Wright has ever made a bad film, and this is not a bad film. Its biggest problem is that it's lush, it's beautiful, and it's kind of lazy. So you can't take the world-class filmmaking away from it. And as you watch it, you'll enjoy every moment for the film mastery. But the story itself is problematic as far as its structure and, again, its reliance on tropes that we've seen way too many times in the genre. And it would be easy to lean on that and say, well, it's homages. But I think there is a difference. So ultimately, when I saw this film, I gave it a B- publicly. I've actually now kind of think that C+ is probably closer to the real mark in reflection. The film, I'm not going to spoil anything here that's not in the trailer. I think that's fair ground. But the film is chock full of these scares that are pulled directly out of Carnival of Souls. I mean, directly. The only difference is that they're digital effects now rather than practical effects done with lighting and iridescent makeup. It was really shocking to me how derivative the majority of horror scares in this were. And then there's a lot of jump scares in this film, which normally we freak out as being lazy, but this film is getting a pass for. There's a lot of variations on like that bathroom mirror scare where suddenly someone's there that shouldn't be there. There's a lot of them in this movie. There's also just incredible things that I thought there was a unwritten agreement in Hollywood that we'd never do again. I thought we'd never do she woke up from her nightmare. Oh, she's still in the nightmare. Which to me is about as lame as you can get from just reaching for an effect from an audience standpoint. So the other thing I had a problem with, and this is part of Edgar Wright's style, so I understand it's defensible, but in this attempt to cross genre, it's a little bit different than comedy or action comedy, which is where he's been working up to this point, basically. And it's the needle drops. The reliance on music to get you there. Now, the live music performed by Anya Taylor-Joy, Joy Taylor, whichever, was fine. It was part of the story. It was part of it. But there was plenty of times when we just went into montage with music from the era, and it's a bit much. There's a big difference between in Baby Driver, the scene in which the Dam's Neat 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 gets played during a car chase because it's being ironic and edgy, and this where Susie and the Banshees Happy House plays in a club because, well, we need energy. So I think it was too reliant on needle drops. And then the big problem I have with it, the thing that keeps it out of the B range, the more I think about it, is the last 12 minutes of the movie. To me, thematically falls into it. Like opens like a blooming onion at your favorite sports bar restaurant. It just opens up and just kind of falls apart from a thematic standpoint.
Great.
And I don't want to say much more about it because I'd have to go into spoilers that would affect your enjoyment or lack of enjoyment of the film. But that's my list of like criticisms. Now, what I want to say is the other side of this is what Stone is talking about. If you want to go and get drunk on film, this is the movie of the year for you. Its reliance on tropes and shortcuts hurts. It's better when it's not being a horror film, which is painful for me to say. When it's being a horror film, which is virtually the entire last 12 minutes of the film, from the point where we have the obvious homage to Suspiria of a young woman walking in the rain in very decadent lighting towards a hotel. From that moment on, the movie really becomes, to me, almost a parody of what it could have been. It's much better when it's kind of a character study, and that's kind of the movie I wish it had stayed.
So
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, before Dan, I have to interrupt real quick.
No, go for it.
So, on that note, Lauren, what you're saying is you're the Dread Central writer who put up that column that said last night and just so.
I've never written for Dread Central.
I don't think you'd be allowed on the show.
I don't think so. Well, I don't think I'd be allowed on there for being on here either.
No.
No, I think that there's an audience for this that's going to love it. I think its priorities are just very different than my priorities.
No, that's I haven't seen it yet. I know that I'm going to enjoy it, but I'm not. I would really like to just enjoy some horror movies this year, and I'm not. I'm keeping my expectations low, not because I think I'm going to be disappointed by everything, but just because I want to be able to immerse myself in those moments and just see where the story goes and where it takes me. And if I enjoy it, I enjoy it. And if I don't, I don't. So I'm pretty open to Last Night in Soho. But, what I do like about Anya Taylor-Joy is, like, I know everybody hates New Mutants for the most part. She was great.
I like that film. I was one of the few defenders of it.
All right. Fair enough. Never mind. I mean, I thought she was great as Majik, and I also like how far apart her eyes are. She reminds me of Gwen from Splice.
I love chicks with big eyes, so that's No, she's a great actress in her own right, and I think she elevates almost everything. In fact, this movie becomes probably a C- without her. In fact, I was saying this to Dan earlier, but the big problem with her in this movie is that I wanted more of her and less of everyone else.
I mean, you're just automatically drawn to her. She's very magnetic.
Everyone is good in this. Okay. And there's only a few lines of dialogue that are bad, I should mention. There's a couple, but the rest of the dialogue is very good. But I will say that she's actually phenomenal in this. And that's a problem when everyone else is not phenomenal. It makes you wish that she was just front and center the whole time. Don't tell it in flashbacks. Just tell me that story with her. I'm fine.
Yeah, there's some turns in this that you can probably guess. I mean, not to go ahead and point them out. There's one in particular that it was, okay, I know where this is going. I don't know if I totally agree with the rest of the cast, though. I thought Thomasin McKenzie as Eloise. I saw her in a 2018 film called Leave No Trace. She was Ben Foster, who was kind of a veteran who was dealing with PTSD, and he was living in the middle nowhere in the forest with her, and it's a very touching movie. And when I saw that in 2018, I was like, ooh, she's going to be a star. And after this, I think she played it perfectly, that kind of innocent girl swallowed up by the big city. I think she worked quite well. I do agree. Anya Taylor-Joy, I mean, my God, is she a star? The talent. And there were some times where, I get what you're saying. It would have been nice to focus on just her being her and not through Mackenzie or Eloise's eyes. But go ahead.
I was just going to ask though. So I mean, the main character, who's the actress's name always escapes me, but
Thomas and
she,
Mackenzie.
yeah, exactly. She's doing Dorothy, right?
Sure.
That's what she's doing.
Yeah.
There's a template for it, and that's also like, how do you do more with it? And I didn't get that.
I get. Yeah.
She was fine, but Anna's performance is more like the other film I'd compare this very much to would be Starry Eyes.
Yeah.
Also features an amazing performance by Alex Esso.
Mm-hmm.
But this is even better. So it builds on. This is the best performance of its kind. No one else was doing that in this film. That's all I'm saying. It was not a slam on anyone. It's just sometimes you have a film where one performance is too strong for the rest of the film. We used to get that from Al Pacino all the time, right?
Yeah.
Where he'd be in something and he was the only thing worth watching because not that anything else was bad, but why did we just get that?
He's up here and I get that. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I could pick at with this movie. It's not, not the most original thing in the world, but I think as a sort of neo giallo, I was very entertained by it. It's flawed, but again, I was very, very entertained by it. Visually, it's as beautiful as it looks in the trailer, even more so. I like that it was different from Edgar Wright's previous films. Some would say Baby Driver was different, but even that kind of still had, that little bit of I always forget what they call that trilogy off the top of my head, but his Shaun of the Dead and his previous films, there's still a little bit of that in Baby Driver. This felt completely different. I think it was a good career move for him. And again, even flawed, I put him up there with Villeneuve. I know how to say it. It's just, it doesn't come out of my mouth. I will at this point see whatever he does because I think he is a legit filmmaker with a vision. And I had no idea what this movie even was when I first saw that trailer. I was like, wow, I have no clue. It was just downtown, the Petula Clark cover, and a whole lot of weirdness. And I was in. Didn't need to know more. Edgar Wright, I'm in. I did love it. I don't think it's cracking my top 5 for the year or anything like that. But I will revisit this one. It flawed, but still great film.
And
I hear
oh,
Anya
sorry, go
Taylor-Joy
ahead.
is pretty good. I was going to say I hear Anya Taylor-Joy is really good in it too.
Yeah, she is. She really felt like she could have been a starlet in the 60s, if that makes sense. Like, just it's hard. Modern actresses, sometimes that the look just isn't quite there. I could have seen her being a
got
big
that
deal
look for sure.
Yeah.
She could play in any era. I mean, whether it's 16th century New England or if it's 16th century New England, 19th century England, or 1960s England. I mean, she could probably play any woman in any time period. But I was just going to throw out to Lauren real quick. Derivativeness, that is I can get behind that. All I'm going to say is, look, Carnival of Souls is one of my favorite horror films of all time. Maybe that's one of the reasons why I was having psychological orgasms, just because he was loving it and he wanted to do his own version of it. In essence, in this movie, he threw out a list of like 25 movies from the 60s that he's essentially celebrating in this movie. So, he's basically exercising all that, which I think is wonderful.
I get that, and that's fine, but my line is that can never interfere with your actual storytelling, and I think there's times when this crosses that line. But again, I know I just gave out a laundry list of complaints, but understand that going into that big of specifics, I'm just saying this film comes close to greatness, and if you would have erased my concerns, you would have been there. That's all I'm saying. Do I think everyone should see this thing? Yeah, I do. I think everyone should support any time a horror film comes out that has 3 brain cells and a great cast, right? But, listen, what do we talk about here on the show? We talk about movies. It's always going to be a discussion.
More clips just like this, be sure to subscribe to the Region Free YouTube channel and also check out the Patreon to get exclusive content and become a Regionaire.